An ABC investigation has found that a number of sunscreens tested by Choice and found to fall short of their label claims all used one overseas lab for their SPF certification. Choice tested 20 popular sunscreens at an Australian lab and found that 16 of them didn't meet the sun protection factor on their label, with one recording an SPF of just 4. Well, I'm joined now by specialist reporting team's Rachel Carbonell. Hi there, Rachel. Explain a little bit more about what your investigation found.
Look, we went back to the sunscreens that were tested by Choice and found that at least 8 of the ones that underperformed in the Choice testing had all used one particular overseas lab to get their original SPF certification before they were allowed to be sold in Australia. That lab is called Princeton Consumer Research. We got our hands on some of those SPF test results and we ran them past some experts both here in Australia and overseas, and they pretty much unanimously found that they had some questions and concerns about those results. To understand what they were saying, you sort of have to know a little bit about SPF testing. Usually there's about 10 test subjects that are used, and they have some UV radiation exposed to some skin with some sunscreen on it and some skin that doesn't have sunscreen on it. And then those readings are used to calculate an SPF number for each of the test volunteers. Now, experts say with 10 people, you would expect those results to vary a little bit, but in a lot of these labs' results, there was a lack of variation in those. So one of the test reports, for example, had 9 volunteers that all got exactly the same SPF value down to the decimal point. In some of the other reports, it was 8 that had the identical result. And so experts have said that that's a little bit surprising. They have been careful to say that it's not impossible to have identical results lining up like that, and it is possible that that could happen, but they couldn't explain it. One of the experts that I spoke to said it's unusual to see them lining up that cleanly, and he'd be asking the lab, how did they get those results? We did go back to the lab and they said that it is uncommon to have them lining up in that way, but it does happen, and that's what's happened in the case of the test reports that the ABC has seen. But it did say that, for a high-performing product in a test environment, that can happen, and that their processes are robust and verifiable.
Yeah, really interesting. I gather your investigation has also thrown up more details about one of the company's technical directors. What can you tell us?
So these SPF test reports usually have a principal investigator that signs off on the report, and on a lot of the reports that we saw from Princeton Consumer Research, that person was a man called Barry Druitt. In 2010, he was disqualified from being a company director in the UK for 8 years for his role in a previous testing firm. That firm, Euroderm Research, went into liquidation in 2008 with debts of more than £500,000. Separately to that, Mr Druitt was accused of fabricating clinical trial data in 2006 and 2007 and was charged over that in 2011. However, the UK regulator didn't present any evidence in court on those charges, and they were thrown out. And the judge ordered the jury to find Mr Druitt and his co-defendants not guilty, and the ABC is not inferring any wrongdoing in relation to that. When we contacted Mr Druitt about it, he was emphatic that any wrongdoing from that matter, inferring that would be deeply misleading, and that none of this has anything to do with any bearing on the company that he currently works at, which is Princeton Consumer Research, which is the lab that we're talking about today. OK. Rachel, what do you think it means for customers? Look, I think it means that we need to look to the experts on this. I mean, I think people are pretty passionate about their sunscreens. That's something that's very clear from the stories about sunscreens that we've seen over the last few weeks, and that's a good thing because Australia has very high rates of skin cancer. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, is the body responsible for regulating sunscreens. They require that sunscreens go and get this SPF testing done before they're sold in Australia, but they don't actually have any oversight of the third-party labs that do that. So it'll be interesting to see, with this confusion around SPF results, what action can be taken there. Some of the sunscreen brands have told us that they are going to another lab altogether to get their sunscreens tested again, and I think that indicates that they're taking it pretty seriously. But I think probably for consumers, the most important thing is that don't throw out your sunscreen. You should still be using sunscreen, even if you've got a sunscreen that is, you think, maybe not SPF 50 institutions like the Melanoma Institute are so keen for Australians to know that the difference between SPF 50 and SPF 25 is not as great as many people would think. It still provides protection. The most important thing is to make sure you put enough on, which many Australians don't do, to reapply it regularly, to wear a hat and sunglasses and long sleeves and seek shade, and keep wearing sunscreen.
Rachel, thanks for that.